Hey guys, before we start, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any feedback. Let's go to the story. I 24M don't usually post on here, but I need to get this off my chest. My father threatened to cut my college tuition unless I showed up for my golden brother's wedding. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, is that I graduated a year ago and now make more money than he ever did. But let's rewind, because the build-up to this was years in the making. Growing up in Cedar Glen, Oregon, I was the placeholder child. The other kid. The one who wasn't Mason. My brother Mason was born glowing, at least according to my parents. He had the full package, big blue eyes, chubby cheeks, and a laugh that made strangers melt. I was born 2 years earlier, skinny, allergic to everything, and forgettable. The contrast was instant, and from that moment on, I became the background character in a show titled The Mason Chronicles. My parents, Frank and Celeste, didn't even hide it. Every school play, every photo album, every dinner table discussion, Mason was the main event. I got polite nods, a pat on the head, and the occasional, "Oh right, Dylan's here too." Mason? He soaked it in. Became the kind of kid who assumed the world owed him a round of applause for existing. When he broke something, it was curiosity. When I did the same, it was carelessness. When he got AC, it was the teacher's fault. When I brought home straight S, good job. Now, let's look at Mason's new painting. That painting, a lopsided orange cat, hung on our fridge for 5 years. My report card went into the junk drawer. It didn't stop with fridge art. Mason decided what we watched on TV, where we went for dinner, and what color the living room should be painted. Every decision passed through him. I wasn't just ignored, I was actively benched in my own home. By high school, I'd stopped trying to be seen. I became the quiet kid with headphones, always at the library or working on a project just to avoid the circus at home. I started looking for a way out, not just emotionally but physically. Senior year, I got it. I was offered a scholarship to a prestigious finance program across the country, the kind of school that makes recruiters salivate. I was ready to pack my bags and finally start living a life that didn't revolve around Mason's ego. But then came the catch. My parents suggested I stay local. They said it'd save money. Said I'd be closer to family. But the real reason? They didn't want Mason to feel less than. See, Mason didn't get into any of the schools he applied to, barely graduated, if I'm honest. And the thought of me going off to something better? That triggered some invisible family alarm. So they sat me down, Frank all serious, Celeste wiping fake tears, and said, "We think it's best for everyone if you go to Cedar Glen Community. Just for now." I smiled and said, "Okay, but I want to live on campus." They agreed, enthusiastically. Thought they'd won. They had no idea that I packed my bags, moved 3 states away, and started my dream program with 70% of tuition covered by scholarship, and the rest unknowingly funded by the people trying to hold me back. For the next 3 years, I lived a double life. Frank and Celeste thought I was in town the whole time, at a sleepy local college, still the obedient shadow they raised. In reality, I was studying finance in Chicago, acing every course, landing internships with Fortune 500s, and lining up a 6-figure offer before I even walked the stage. I graduated a year ago. They still don't know. It all kicked off on a Sunday afternoon with a text from my dad. Frank never texts unless someone's dead or demanding something. "Call me. We need to talk about your brother's big day." I ignored it for a few hours, made coffee, cleaned up the shop, took Rex to the dog park. Finally, I called. Not because I cared, but because I wanted to hear how much he'd dance around saying what he really wanted. "Dylan," he started, that signature tone like he was about to pitch a used car with hidden damage. "Your brother's wedding is coming up. It would mean a lot to him, and your mother and me, if you were there." I stayed quiet. He kept talking. "Look, I know things haven't always been perfectly balanced, but this is about family and support. Mason's nervous, you know? Big step. Right. Nervous. About having a wedding that probably cost more than my entire college degree." He paused. Then came the line he thought would hit. "We've been generous helping with school, Dylan. If we're going to continue doing that, I think it's fair to expect a little involvement in family events." There it was. The threat. He still thought he had me on a leash. That I was out there struggling through general ed credits at Cedar Glen Community while he floated my tuition and judged my every move. He had no idea I hadn't needed his money for over a year. So I played dumb. "Oh, well, okay. When's the wedding?" His voice lifted, eager, smug. 2 weeks. It's a big venue in Ashfield. Formal attire. We'll cover your travel and suit rental, of course. Of course. This wasn't an invitation. It was a command. And the plane ticket? The suit? All just props for the big show they were putting on. One is where Mason is the star, and I'm the blurry extra in the background to balance the family photo. I said, sure, I'll be there. Then I hung up and smiled, because I already had a plan. From the outside, I probably looked like the prodigal son making a rare appearance. Polite texts. RSVP marked, yes +1. Emails with my flight info. Even confirmed my meal choice, chicken, of course. Always the neutral option. Frank was thrilled. Celeste sent a series of emojis I didn't bother decoding. Mason? Didn't say a word. I doubt he even noticed. He was too busy getting tailored for the 10th time and posting gym selfies captioned, "Wife me up already." The irony. He wasn't marrying some childhood sweetheart. He was marrying Alyssa, a social climber type I'd seen in his Instagram feed maybe 3 months earlier. Not much of a connection between them, except matching jawlines and a shared love of being photographed. I did some digging. Turns out that Alyssa came from a well-known family. Not mega wealthy, but local royalty in their own right. Her father was the CEO of a tech startup that just went public, and her mother ran some kind of boutique wedding consultancy. In other words, she had standards, which made what I found very interesting. 2 weeks before the wedding, while finalizing my travel details, I had a conversation with my friend Carmen, a cybersecurity specialist I met during a summer internship in Chicago. She's wicked smart, suspicious by nature, and likes to dig. When I told her about the wedding and the family circus surrounding it, she got curious. Send me Mason's socials, she said, already typing. Less than 24 hours later, she'd found everything. Let's just say, Mason was not the faithful, devoted fiancé he portrayed himself to be. A private Finsta, 2 secret messaging apps, a handful of recent transactions tied to an anonymous account, and most damning of all, a series of time-stamped images, him in hotel rooms, him shirtless, him with other women. Plural. Some recent. Some within the last month. Carmen pulled it all together in a tidy folder and dropped it in my inbox with a wink. I stared at it. Then I smiled. Not out of malice, but because for once, the golden boy had handed me a golden opportunity. I booked my flight, rented a tux, and made one last call to someone they'd not expect to see on my arm. Weddings are supposed to be joyful. This one felt like a movie set, everything too polished, too perfectly arranged. The kind of event where no one eats the food because it's just there to be photographed. The venue? Massive estate in Ashfield. Ivy-covered walls. Crystal chandeliers. Guests in custom-tailored suits pretending they weren't sweating under the Oregon sun. I arrived early. Not because I cared, but because I wanted to watch the chaos simmer. There's something satisfying about seeing people scramble while pretending everything's under control. I wore a charcoal tux. Clean lines, nothing flashy. Just sharp enough to make people second-guess their assumptions. And my +1? Harper. Brilliant, confident, and far too good for most of the people in that building. We'd met during an internship rotation. Stayed close. She was the kind of person who knew how to read a room and smile in all the right ways, until she didn't have to. She was fully briefed. Knew exactly who Mason was, what the plan was, and why this wasn't just a social visit. We walked in together, and I watched heads turn. Frank and Celeste were stationed near the entrance like the king and queen of mediocre parenting. Their faces lit up when they saw me, until they saw her. Celeste stepped forward and forced a smile. "Oh, Dylan, you made it. And this must be Harper," I said. "My girlfriend." Harper shook hands like a diplomat. Polite, polished. But the steel in her eyes said she wasn't here to play nice. Frank gave a slow nod, clearly trying to place her status, her background, whether she was someone worth impressing. She wasn't. She was someone worth fearing. Mason was nowhere in sight. Alyssa either. Probably off being pampered or praying this fairy tale would stick. I mingled. Said hi to extended family. Met a few of Alyssa's relatives. I didn't bring up Mason's name once. Then, about an hour before the ceremony, Harper gave me the nod. Everything was in place. We'd printed the evidence. Not everything, just enough. Screenshots. Receipts. A short but scathing summary with names, dates, and photos. Harper had already slipped a sealed envelope into the bridal suite earlier, under the guise of dropping off a card. Inside it? The truth. We didn't leave a note. Didn't sign anything. Just the facts. Let her figure it out. Weddings are full of tiny signals, shared glances, hushed whispers, and smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. 15 minutes before the ceremony, I started seeing those signals ripple through the crowd like static. The first sign? One of Alyssa's bridesmaids, flushed, pale, clearly rattled, hurried past the rows of chairs toward the bridal suite. Then another followed, whispering, clutching her phone. Then, the string quartet stopped playing. That's when I knew. Harper leaned in. That's our cue. We stayed seated. No need to move. This was their scene now. We were just the ones who handed the script to the director. A few guests started murmuring. The wedding coordinator, panicked but trying to smile, stepped out and made a vague announcement about a brief delay. Sure, the delay lasted 20 minutes. Then the door to the suite opened, and Alyssa walked out. Alone. No veil. No bouquet. Just her calm, composed, face unreadable. She walked straight to the front, whispered something to the officiant, then turned to face the crowd. I appreciate everyone being here, she said, her voice carrying over the garden like a blade. But there will be no wedding today. Gasps. Audible. Real. She held up a piece of paper. I've just been made aware of some things about Mason that make it impossible for me to move forward. Someone tried to approach her mother, I think, but she waved them off. This isn't drama, she said. It's accountability. You can pick up a statement on your way out. It's all there. People started shifting in their seats, looking around for Mason. He was nowhere to be seen. Alyssa gave a single nod to the crowd, turned, and walked back into the building like she'd just closed a business deal. No crying. No breakdown. Just decisive, graceful destruction. Harper squeezed my hand. The coordinator tried to salvage the moment, offering food, drinks, asking people to enjoy the reception anyway. A few did. Most didn't. And still, no sign of Mason. Until, about 15 minutes later, I saw him bolt through a side door with his jacket half off and his phone pressed to his ear like it owed him money. Red-faced. Furious. Cornered. He saw me. Stopped. Just for a second. His face contorted into something between recognition and panic. Like he couldn't quite process how I was standing there calm, clean, collected, while his life crumbled behind him. I raised my glass. No words. Just a nod. He turned and disappeared into the parking lot. I didn't stay long after the ceremony imploded. Harper and I had a drink, mingled just long enough to watch the social fallout settle like ash, then dip before anyone remembered we were supposed to be grieving the loss of a golden child's perfect day. On the way out, we passed a table with neatly printed half-sheets, Alyssa's statement. She hadn't been bluffing. It included a short, scathing explanation of her decision and the core screenshots, names redacted, but the timeline was clear enough that anyone with a brain could put it together. We didn't need to make a scene. She made it for us. We were halfway back to Portland when the first call came in. Frank. Ignored. Then Celeste. 3 texts in a row. Where are you? Did you know about this? You're making things worse by hiding. Hiding? I laughed out loud in the car. What they meant was, you're not standing here letting us scream at you like we used to. That night, I turned my phone off. No guilt. No hesitation. The next morning, I checked my email. And there it was. A message from Mason. Subject line. You proud of yourself? I didn't even open it. He'd be furious, of course. Embarrassed. Spinning every version of events that painted him as the victim. Probably blaming Alyssa. Or me. Or both. That's how it always went. Nothing was ever his fault. But here's the thing. I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, he was the one with something to explain. The rest of the week was radio static. A few family friends reached out, some vague, some fishing for the story. I said the same thing to all of them. It's not my story to tell. Which, ironically, was the most powerful thing I could say. Frank called again. Then again. Then, I left a voicemail. Dylan, we need to talk. Your brother's devastated. You can't ignore us forever. And that's when I finally broke the silence. One text. You're right. I can't ignore you forever. But I can choose never to speak to you again. Blocked. Then Celeste. Same treatment. Then Mason. The entire Cartwright PR machine shut down with 3 taps and a little peace of mind. Harper brought over Chinese food that night. We sat on my floor, eating straight from the containers, Rex curled between us like a neutral third party. You feel bad? She asked. No. She smiled. Good. Because of this? This is what healing looks like. 1 year later to the day, I found myself sitting on the porch of my new place, a small house outside Bend, Oregon. Nothing extravagant. 2 bedrooms, lots of windows, and a garage I'd turned into a part-time workshop. It's quiet out here. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, just earned. My job in finance had only grown. That 6-figure offer I got after graduation turned into something better. I negotiated remote flexibility, moved out of the city, and built a rhythm I liked. No suits, no commutes. No one is yelling from the sidelines about how I'm not doing enough. The Etsy shop I started with Harper took off, too. She did custom ceramic pieces. I handled furniture and builds. Between commissions and word of mouth, we had to start turning people away by month 8. We weren't rich, but we were good. Better than good. She moved in a few months ago. No announcement. No long conversation. Just one morning, her coffee mug was already in my cupboard, and neither of us questioned it. She never asked about Mason. Or my parents. Not unless I brought them up. But I didn't need to. Because the universe handled that part for me. It started with a forwarded article from a former college friend. Local startup exec accused of fraud, misuse of funds. The company? The same one Alyssa's dad ran. The one Mason had tried, very publicly, to get a job at after the wedding fell apart. Someone had used insider access to leak sensitive data from Alyssa's family's network in a desperate attempt to win favor elsewhere. No proof it was Mason, but everyone had a guess. That article made the rounds. Fast. Frank and Celeste went into full protect the family name mode. Mason was suddenly dealing with mental health issues and stepping back from professional life. Translation: he burned every bridge he had. The cherry on top? Mason's Finsta, the one Carmen dug into all those months ago, finally got leaked. Not by me. Not by Harper. By one of the girls he cheated with. He ghosted her after promising her a fake engagement ring. The screenshots hit a niche gossip blog and went semi-viral in our area. Frank had to resign from the local bank board. Celeste deleted all her socials. And me? I posted a picture of the coffee table I just finished, dark walnut, clean edges, and carved initials hidden underneath. Captioned it. Built something that lasted. No hashtags. No drama. But the people who needed to see it? They did. A few weeks after the gossip dust settled, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. An actual letter, in thick cream-colored envelope stock, addressed in looping cursive to Dylan Cartwright. I knew the handwriting. Celeste. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. I wasn't angry. Just curious. Like watching an old movie you already know the ending to, just to see if you missed a detail. The letter was long, full of half apologies, passive guilt, and "we were only trying to protect you" excuses. The usual Cartwright spin. She wrote about Mason's spiral, about how Frank was under stress, and how they never meant to make me feel like less. But then came the real reason for the letter. We're planning a small family gathering this fall. We'd love to see you there. Mason will be home. It's time to start mending bridges. It was handwritten, underlined, mending bridges, as if they hadn't spent 2 decades driving bulldozers through every chance I had at self-worth. As if my silence hadn't been their cue to finally listen. I didn't write back. Instead, I slipped the letter into the drawer of my workshop desk, next to a packet of sandpaper and an old bottle of varnish. And then I got back to work. Later that week, Harper and I finished a custom order for a client, a cedar bookshelf with carved panels. It was a gift for a child, something to hold stories that hadn't even been written yet. Before we wrapped it, I added one final detail. On the underside of the top shelf, in a place no one would see unless they went looking, I carved 4 words. You don't own me. Because that's the legacy I get to write now. Not one built on fear. Not on guilt. Not on clapping for people who never once clapped for me. But on peace. And freedom. And the kind of strength that doesn't need permission or applause. Just quiet, steady hands.